on, Jerk Faces? It's your boy, Andy, and you're watching Nocturnal Transmissions, brought to you by the Circle of Jerks podcast. It's a conversation you could be having during the day, but having at night. Although today we are having it during the day because this is a pre-tape, because of, you know the reason why, because it's always Robert's fault. And speaking of Robert, we are accommodating yet again for, His Royal Highness, the homeboy Rob.
Exactly. That's the way it should be.
You better check that white privilege.
So great to have it. It served me so well.
Right, I know. All right, let's get this conversation started. So, Rob, how's it going?
It's going okay. Finally have a day off after I was supposed to have a bunch of time off, and then I helped out some people from work, and then I ended up having no time off. So, you know how that goes. So I'm owed a bunch of favors now. So that's good. And been playing a new game that came out this past week that I've been waiting on for a while. There's a new Dragon Quest game that came out, which has been quite fantastic. So I've been playing that a little bit today and last night. And just kind of the normal stuff, getting ready to go on a retreat for the youth kids. So I'm going to be helping out this weekend for that. So that'll be fun.
That's good. Anything? Did you do anything special this week?
This past weekend, no, not really. I mainly just worked, and I'm trying to think if I did anything new. No, yeah, just mainly just worked, and then the time that I did have off, I was gonna watch a bunch of all the racing this weekend at Indianapolis, but it was rained out all weekend, so I had to wait till what was it, Monday is when they had all the race activities. So yeah, I didn't really do much this weekend. So I don't know what. Oh, sorry. No, I was gonna say is one thing that's been kind of weird this weekend is I don't know what's been going on with my appetite, but man, I've been eating a lot the last few days. After a few hours, I get hungry again. I don't know what's going on. It's very unusual for me.
Is it just hunger, or do you have are you craving a certain thing?
I don't know if it was necessarily craving anything specific, but I've gone to different places, but yeah, no, just hungry, which is it's kind of odd for me.
See. Huh, that is
because normally I'll eat and then I'll be good for a little while, and then but I can go until I can wait till the next meal, but then there's last few days it's just been after a few hours man, I'm hungry again. I had to see if I can go find something to eat.
You've been eating a lot of Chinese food?
No, I haven't eaten any Chinese food recently. I've I've done tacos. I did Jersey Mike's. Did Wiener Schnitzel. Some of the usual haunts that I go to.
Oh yeah, I only ask because that old thing where you have you eat Chinese food and then an hour later you're hungry again.
True, though the Chinese place that I go to, they always give a ton of food, so I usually have a lot of leftovers. So if
we ate that one time.
Yeah, the Golden Sky or what? Yeah, that's the man. That place is good though. It's a little pricey, but they give you a lot of food, so it's kind of
when we ordered from there, I was pretty surprised at just the portion size.
Yeah, because normally like a lot of places are very tiny portions.
Right.
At
But
least
I
I guess
think
in
I
more of
think
the
because because that is more of like a family, family style kind of restaurant.
true.
It makes more sense that the portions would be big because they're probably thinking it's like more than two people are going to be eating.
Very true. Yeah, that actually does sound pretty good. Getting Chinese food. Dang it.
You're welcome.
Exactly.
What is it? Yeah, I mean, I didn't do much this weekend either. I did have dinner with my cousin and my sister for my sister's birthday on Saturday. That was cool because my cousin made Indian food,
Oh,
and yeah, so had some chicken tikka masala with some garlic naan.
oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was really good because my cousin didn't use so much butter, so you don't get like that kind of gross feeling after eating so much
True.
because of the butter. Um, yeah, and that's about it for me on the weekend. Well, and then on Sunday I did go out with some friends to go out dinner. We try to go to Salsa and Beers here in the valley.
That place is good.
Yeah, it is, but the wait time is just ridiculous. And we thought that
You have.
we thought that it wouldn't be so bad going like early, like around like 4:35
Mm-hmm.
or 4:30 to 5 o'clock. Um, but yeah, when we got there, like the
That's a very specific time. 4:35.
yeah, exactly. I yeah, so, because I'm a real stickler for time. But yeah, even when we got there, we thought we were being clever and missing like the dinner rush or whatever. But even then, it was like still slammed and like 45-minute wait. And
I find.
none of us were about that noise, so we just decided to go somewhere else.
Yeah, I find the weekdays are the best time to go.
Ah, yeah, yeah, because we didn't factor in like it being Sunday and like more people have Sunday off and they're gonna do more family kind of gatherings.
Oh, that's why like I tend not to go to uh like certain like pho places or like certain other places on Sundays because man it's like super packed.
Yeah, that and dim sum places.
Yeah, I haven't been to one in a while. We should do that sometimes soon.
I haven't had I haven't had a Xiao Long Bao in a long time.
I guess we're just gonna be talking about food on this episode.
I know,
It's like I'm so hungry.
Xiao Long Bao and pork Shumai. Mai.
Oof.
It's all good.
Yeah, it is.
It's all fantastic.
There's a lot of things that I hate about living in Los Angeles, but one of the great benefits is there's so many great options for food,
Right,
and
yeah.
you can get like pretty like decent, authentic. It's not some like Americanized version of the uh, of that cuisine. It's actual. Like, if you want to there's some good Indian places that are actually owned by Indian people, Chinese places, Korean places, Mexican places, you name it.
Yeah, I mean, LA is for sure a food city, and
Absolutely.
it's an embarrassment of riches to live in the city, and because like one of the big things when I'm hanging out with my friends is like deciding where to eat, because we've during the week we've all gone and like eaten at places, so we might not feel like a specific type of food. Someone
Yep.
suggests like Mexicans, like, oh, I had that on Thursday, or someone suggests like Korean is like, oh, I had that on Wednesday, and so on and so on. So so it's definitely a first world problem to have.
Yeah. Well, I know it's like hanging around with like a lot of you guys where it's like, hey, what do you want to eat? And then we sit around for like another 2 hours talking about like where we want to eat.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and then like at a certain point, someone has to finally buck and like, fine, let's just go to this place, and they have to make the executive call.
It's like playing chicken.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that is enough small talk for this one episode. So let's get into some of the topics that we have lined up for y'all. Do you want to start first?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about a little bit of U.S. Open action and get a little bit of cheese with our wine. So if you guys aren't tennis fans, or if you're at least not women's tennis fans, which I wouldn't blame you.
Please let us get a hate comment for that.
Yeah. There was I'm assuming it was the finals, right? It wasn't just a match, but it was the finals of the U.S. Women's Open final, right? Wasn't it?
I believe so.
Well, anyways, it was Serena Williams, who most people know, even if you're not a tennis fan. She's a pretty popular name, and a younger, wasn't she like half Japanese or something like that?
No. No, her opponent, Naomi Osaka, is half Japanese, half Asian.
That's what I meant. That she was the competitor was like a half Japanese person, and in normal circumstances, so Serena has won many major titles, and a person she was competing against that she had considered Serena Williams to be kind of like one of her heroes. So to go up against to get a major and and compete against the person you've looked up to your whole life, that's an athlete's dream, and in any sport, if you can go up against like the person that you grew up watching and idolizing, that's a big thing. But of course, for Serena Williams ended up making the whole thing about herself right from the get-go, and she got called out on cheating, right from the somewhere in the match, and most of these people have coaches, but the rules are that there can't be any sort of signaling back and forth during the match. And Serena Williams' coach was, and to his own admission, he admitted to it that he was giving her signals during the match, and so she was penalized for that. And instead of just saying like, "Oh crap, we got caught," and just kept on going, which is what normal athletes do, she decided to become a petulant child and complain and yell to the referee, and kind of made it about herself. And it's like that's bad enough to have that happen in the match. Then she ends up losing a tough set to her opponent and throws her racket down, which is also a penalty because it's unsportsmanlike conduct. I mean, she broke her racket because she was kind of in a John McEnroe fashion, and
right.
And she lost.
Like, and I know, and then like they have like a strange link. Anyways, that goes back a while before like this. I mean, I don't know, like some people are considering this a controversy, but I would definitely. I mean, I guess I might also, but I would make it like I would say that this was like a worrying case.
Well, I think the other thing too is you would think that her opponent would be the one that like she's never been there before, and so for her to, whereas like a champion, you think that they would handle themselves a little bit differently,
a little bit
but
more
that was
graciously, a little bit, a little bit more, a little bit more,
yeah,
what is that? With a little bit more humility.
exactly. But so,
But
anyways,
yeah, I mean,
she's
if you listen to the audio, like when she's going off on the ref, the umpire, yeah, it sounds like someone who's never been there before.
yeah,
And
and
she's like constantly saying like, oh, how dare you? You're calling my integrity into question, and it's like, well, you were cheating, so
yeah. Yeah, and then so she has the cheating penalty. She has the unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, and then she gets a third penalty for shouting at the I don't know like she either if it was like some obscenity that she shouted at him or whatever, or she said something like also unsportsmanlike, and so she got penalized for that too. So she had 3 penalties on the event, and those penalties racked up, and she lost because of that. Well, she got outplayed. She got outplayed for one, and then these penalties didn't help her. She might have had a better shot had she just kept her mouth shut and played like a professional.
Right, and what is like some of these infractions also carry a monetary penalty as well.
Right. But what I thought was the sad part of it all is I wasn't looking at the Serena acting like a child problem, but it was more of her opponent who should be one of the biggest moments of her career, her life.
Mm-hmm.
She not only did she beat the person that she looked up to, mm-hmm. But afterwards that she had to she was booed and ridiculed because Serena for whatever reason the fans were on Serena's side and they were booing her opponent and all this other stuff, and it's and so what should have been her greatest moment is just it's this confusing, horrible, bittersweet
right. It's completely soured, and Serena completely stepped on her moment.
Yeah.
And it was really sad because when the officials were calling out the penalties and stuff like that, you could if you watched, you could hear the crowd, you could hear the crowd booing and jeering and sneering, and then when they announced Naomi Osaka as the winner, it was it was constant boos, and whether or not they were booing to the fact that she to her personally is, I think, beside the point. They were booing for this girl who was who's young, who's almost half the age of Serena Williams, I think. And
yeah.
And this is one of her greatest achievements, in life, winning an Open, and people are booing that. And again, regardless of whether they were not booing her personally, but booing the situation, that it's
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
She didn't.
As someone who who performs at the higher echelons within a sport, that should be the greatest moment of your life.
And let's set the record straight too, is that she outperformed Serena Williams hands down that. So it wasn't that she won on a technicality, because it may have been a little bit closer had Serena actually acted like a professional. But not only did she got outplayed, and then she got those penalties on top of that, which kind of handed the win to her opponent. But what was it? I was watching the Michael Knowles show yesterday, and he kind of compared Serena Williams to Hillary Clinton being a sore loser. It's it couldn't possibly be me. It's all you. It's the referee. It's everyone else. And it's well, no. You just you didn't have the goods today, and then you on top of that you were cheating and then throwing a tantrum. What did you expect?
Yeah, and even what was it? Her coach even admitted it. He's just yeah, I'll send you your signals.
And I assume, and when it comes to sports too, I understand that sometimes, if you're not pushing the limits of the rules to assure victory, you aren't trying hard enough. Was it NASCAR is kind of big on that. It's like they'll bend the rules as far as possible, not to the breaking point, but they'll they'll push everything to the limits and maybe get called on. Like they'll have like 20 infractions and maybe only get called on maybe like half of them. And it's like, okay, well, we've gained an advantage on this side of the car that over the competition, and that's normal practice. And I assume it's probably the same for tennis too, where there's probably some sort of secret secret squirrel handshakes going on between the coaches and players. But the fact is, like, when you get caught, it's like, okay, well, yep, we got caught. There we go. It's a penalty. And her coach was smart enough. It's like, yeah, we did that, and we got caught for it this time. That's fine.
Right. It's not like they're saying like you made this infraction, so you are now ousted from like I don't know, whatever professional organization that tennis falls under. Um, I don't think. I mean, other than Serena getting deducted those points, I don't think there was like they weren't calling for her disqualification from like ever playing the game or from that
it wasn't
that
like
coach or that coach ever like coaching again or whatever. It's just like
right.
You just broke the rules within the game, within the set parameters, within the set guidelines of that game. You broke the rules, and so you have to suffer the consequences.
Exactly, and it's just it's just a really, it's one of the low moments in sports where the fact that what should have been someone's highest moment was stripped from them because a champion decided to act like a child.
Right. Yeah, and I mean it kind of sickened me to hear like the audio like of the exchange between the referee and Williams, and like because she started bringing all these like irrelevant things into it.
She's like, I'm a mother.
Yeah, I'm a mother. I'm trying to set an example for my daughter. It's like, well, don't cheat. That'd be setting a
There
really good example for your daughter. Don't cheat. Or if something doesn't go your way, you don't smash your toys. That'd be a great example to set for your daughter to have dignity and grace when things don't go your way. That'd be a great example to set for your daughter, wouldn't it?
Right.
Right. And the supposition that like men don't get called out for their like infractions or whatever. John McEnroe, was the bad boy of tennis, and he constantly got penalized and constantly got called out for his antics.
Yeah. Well, and then of course she turned it into some like kind of sexist line, or it's like, oh yeah, well men, if I was a man, this wouldn't have happened. It's like, well, actually, yeah, it would, because those are actually the rules that are guideline in tennis. It's it's both the men and women's side that are. There's no different rules. It's
right. Yeah.
It's kind of like the codes of conduct within the game, and you broke them. And it's true. Yeah, sure. There are some of the linesmen that are a little bit more lenient on certain things, but this particular one is known to be pretty strict. And so he's kind of like, yeah, you broke the rule, so here's your penalty. Deal with it.
Right. I mean, yeah. If anything, he was treating. I mean, if anything, it's Isn't that like the feminist goal? To be treated like just to be treated just as a man. If a man did this, if a man did the same thing and got caught doing it, then he would receive the same treatment.
Yeah. But it's sad that the the audience essentially booed the event, so the person that won couldn't actually like celebrate in a good way, and
Yeah, I mean
that
well, like the headline shouldn't have read, "Oh, Serena Williams gets robbed of her win or whatever." It should have been like, "Oh, first time U.S. Open competitor wins against champion."
Yeah, and that's and the thing is, and I'm not bashing Serena Williams' talent. She's probably the best female tennis player that has existed.
I mean, and she could both easily, handily, beat the shit out of us in tennis.
Yeah, there's
even despite being men.
Oh yeah, she could beat definitely beat me, but then again, I suck at tennis, so it's.
Yeah, but then like she tried. Yeah, but then I would invoke my crippled privilege.
Wow, I wasn't expecting that one, right? You got me.
You like that?
I did. But yeah, it's just kind of. I just thought the whole thing was just kind of a sad display, and I not that I had a ton of respect for Serena anyways, because she's kind of while she is been one that has always just kind of relied on her talent to get by, and it's kind of like, well, I kind of don't feel like playing today, so she'll like crap out, and she'll kind of give up, and whereas like a lot of people that are at that side, who don't have, even that aren't even on her level talent wise, and they try that, but they try their best and they do well. But then she's like, oh well, you know what, I'm gonna try today, and then she ends up beating them all. It's kind of a she's talking about setting all this good example for her kid and stuff like that. Well, she hasn't really done that.
Yeah.
And and then this display, I've completely lost whatever respect I did have for her, which was very little to begin with. But yeah, she's pretty awful. It's a.
I mean, as a person, not as an athlete.
Yeah.
I guess. Is that everything you wanted to say?
That's everything that I had to say about the U.S. Open. I didn't watch any of the other like the men's side or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, although I think like one of those kind of like exhibition games that they do where they pit like the men against the women. I forget. Serena did play. I forget what rank he was. He wasn't like that. He wasn't like a superstar, but he was still good, like a guy. And like I think the story goes like he had like a really big breakfast. He didn't like really train that hard. Had like smoked 2 cigarettes, and then went on the court and like beat her.
Yep.
Like,
and he was like ranked
handily,
like 200 or 300.
She didn't even make one point off him.
Yeah, and he was ranked like number like 200 or 300 or something like that.
Yeah. And it was funny because like then like in a like a post interview whatever, she like admitted it's like, yeah, like I was doing things that like if I did it to a woman, like I would have won. But like like there's like one serve that they do like where like women like at her like caliber, they wouldn't have been able to like reach the ball in time. But this guy like handily like got it and returned the serve and
right
basically smoked her.
It's just, and that's not to say that like that like she or other women in on the female side of sports that they aren't good or not talented. Like
right? No, no one's saying that.
Now Serena would probably beat you or me because we don't play tennis. Right. Well, you don't have any hands, so you're not playing tennis.
I would then invoke my crippled privilege and I would win by default.
And then you already win, so
yeah, so yeah, she beat you, but not me.
Yeah. I wouldn't expect to win against someone like Serena Williams, or same thing with remember like when Michelle Wie was big and she was trying to compete against the men. It's like it wasn't that she was a bad golfer; the men were better than her. But when Michelle Wie went over to the women's side of golf, she did fine. I think maybe like the one sport where it is somewhat equalized is maybe in the racing world, but even then, the guys have always outperformed the women.
You know what? One sport it is really equalized.
What?
And oftentimes women actually do better than men.
What's that?
Shooting.
Like guns or
guns.
Arrows? Damn, I didn't know that. Because I've heard swimming is one where long distance swimming is where sometimes women do a little bit better than men.
I can see that because their muscle to fat ratio is a little bit more on the fat side, which makes them.
Yeah, Joyce consistently kicks my ass in swimming races.
Yeah, so there you go.
But
I mean, kind of.
No, I didn't know. I did not know that they have been. Well, I know like there's some good like marksmen and stuff, but I didn't know that they were on average better.
Competitions, women like sometimes like often are are ranked higher than men.
Yeah.
So you hear that, ladies? Put down the tennis racket, pick up the gat.
Yeah. And this doesn't mean that we hate women or that like women, or we're saying that women suck and that they don't belong playing sports and all that. That's not what we're saying. Mm-hmm. But on average and based off of just data that is out there, scientific and statistical sports data, that men tend to outperform women. You can look up those same facts yourself, and they don't care about your feelings.
Indeed. All right.
But yeah, sorry display of sportsmanship.
Yeah, for sure. I know. It's just like, yeah, if you heard like the audio, like the exchange between her and the rep, it's like, who's this whiny brat?
Right, yeah. Well, speaking of sorry sports stars that whine like brats, we had to go back to Colin Kaepernick again, and and last week we talked of course about his Nike ad, even though considering he's no longer a quarterback in the NFL, and we have been gifted with greatness this week, where the actual ad was pretty just nothing special, kind of crappy, but the memes making fun of the ad have been absolute gold all week, and I have been laughing my ass off all week with some of the ones that I've been shown throughout the week.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
And it's been like all different forms and genres of just making fun of it. There was one that I saw, as far as the gaming world is concerned, where there was a Super Mario World style Nike meme where kind of using the same tagline of what was the tagline again? It's like was it like sacrifice something or I forget the
it's believe in something even if it means sacrificing everything.
Yeah, no, crap. I'm trying to think of the one that I was shown. Yeah.
I mean, just to give like a little bit of history, like the first one, I think, at least one of the first ones that came out after the drop of this ad campaign was the Thanos one, which I think was pretty apt.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing that one.
Yeah, the Thanos one, I think was like one of the first ones because like people immediately, because that was exactly what Thanos was about. He's like, believe in something even if it costs everything.
Right.
And he was like, he was willing to sacrifice his own daughter. Spoiler alert, Gamora, to attain his goal. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. So it was the same. The one that I'm referring to was the same tagline. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a Super Mario World meme where it was you have Super Mario kind of jumping off Yoshi, ditching him in some crevice.
Yeah. I remember seeing that.
With just to do it.
Yeah. Just to do it.
So that one was good.
Yeah. I also like the I like the Jordan Peterson one where it's like what do you mean? What like define sacrifice and define everything. And
yeah.
Like, instead of the just do it, it was like clean your room.
Yeah, that was a good one. I think I sent you one that I forget who sent. I think it was Brandon who if you haven't seen our latest episode, he was on our latest episode of the main podcast. He sent me a one with the if you're not familiar with or if you're familiar with It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, it was essentially the Dennis system.
Yeah. That was good. Yeah, I got a good laugh out of that when you showed that.
That one, I was laughing for a good 10 minutes with that going on.
Mm-hmm.
That was, and if people are not familiar with the Dennis system, hold on a second, I'm going to pull that one up here because it was just.
I mean, I have it right here.
Gold. Oh yeah, I'll have you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If you're not familiar with the Dennis system, it's it's the character from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. His name, but he developed this system in dating women to
through an acronym of his name.
Yeah, it's an acronym of his name, but it's, so here it's demonstrate value, engage physically, nurture dependence, neglect emotionally, inspire hope, separate entirely.
That personally is my favorite episode of It's
because that show is so genius because it tackles like all like these current event issues, but in kind of like in a South Park kind of way,
right?
Handling like these topical issues, but just doing it so perfectly. This episode they were talking, they were kind of like going over the differences in dating between men and women and how whether it's easier for men or women, and like Dee was the other character in the show, Dennis's sister, like she was trying to prove like that she was empowered, and like she came up with like her own system called the D system, which is basically slutting it up and
yeah,
and just being I hate to use such graphic words, but basically becoming a cum dumpster. And she thought that she was being, which is I think they were definitely kind of giving the wink and the nudge to feminism, where like women's like, oh yeah, go out and slut it up, sleep with as many men as possible, and you're empowered. But like at
Right.
the end of the episode, she's just being used for sex, and like there's no and she's not any more empowered or any more fulfilled.
That's right. And that was right. And then I liked some of the follow up episodes, so where they had the like Mac and Frank, they had their own systems.
Right. Like the Mac system or the Frank system.
Yeah. Oh man, that got a lot of great traction.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't believe they're on their 13th season.
And it's still funny. This is a little bit of a rabbit trail, but yeah, It's Sunny that's such a great show, man.
Yeah, I mean, because it does what South Park does. It makes fun of everybody.
Right.
It's not. It doesn't target like one specific group, or or not, or lifts up one kind of ideology or political belief system over another. It's just it lampoons it all.
Yeah,
and I think
which is what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, and that's what you're supposed to do. Like as a comedy show, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go after everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I discovered this channel on YouTube called We the Internet.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of do the same thing, and like they attack everybody. They attack the left, the right, the center. It doesn't matter. They just make fun of everybody. And that's what I want to see.
Absolutely.
Actually funny.
Yeah.
Like there was like one video that recently came out that it's like stop making me defend Trump. And it was just this, and it was just the main character in like that sketch was just this average guy, but he hears like all like this hyperbolic exaggeration. Trump is gonna cause World War III, and did you hear about him doing this or that? And then it was like the character just comes in and just kind of like, well, no, that's not actually what happened. Actually, what he did was, it kind of like, in a more nuanced way explains what happens. And
right.
Then everyone turns on and is like, oh, I didn't know you're such a, Trump guy, and blah, blah, blah. And then, the joke is like, I'm not, I voted for Hillary. But it's like, people are constantly accusing him of being a right wing or Trump, supporter or whatever.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So I highly recommend that you guys check them out. We the Internet on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, going back to some of the hilarious memes, you have there's a few from the Daily Wire that came out where so Michael Knowles had write something even if it means writing nothing.
Day, right?
No, I didn't see that one.
Oh yeah, it's great because like it's the episode of Pretzel Day, and then you see you see like a shot of the line, and you see Michael Scott, and he's just like I forget how it went, but it was actually Daily Wire that posted it.
I didn't see that. I didn't see that one of theirs.
Yeah, but oh man, it's so funny, especially if you are a hardcore Office fan, you will definitely get a kick out of it.
Oh yeah, no, I know that episode. But no, I was there was Michael Knowles had the write something even if it means writing nothing because his book is completely blank.
Oh right.
It was his book is Reasons to Vote for Democrats, and
all the pages the entire book is just blank pages.
It's like 300 pages of blank.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually tempted to buy that.
Yeah.
No, well, speaking of that, like just for that book is what I was thinking is like I might buy that for my dad to give to my aunt who's a huge Hillary supporter.
Uh-huh.
It's like, here, you can send this as a gag gift. Which because my dad and my aunt don't really get along all that well, so I think that would it's like, well, if you really hate my aunt, here you go.
Is that his sister?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my dad and his sister don't really get along very well.
Yeah, where the hell is it? Man, I wonder if they scrubbed it from the internet. It was just too much. It was too much winning.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it's just there's been so many just really. I mean, there's been some kind of like mediocre ones, but man, there's been some really just absolutely fantastic, memes of this ad. And
The Caitlyn Jenner one was pretty hilarious.
no, I didn't see that one either.
Oh, you did? It's yeah. It was like picture of Caitlyn Jenner, and it's like believe in something, even if it means cutting off your dick.
So I will say this: the actual ad is garbage, and yeah, hey, get woke, go broke. But because of that, they've allowed a lot of humorous content to be produced, and
how?
So that I'm very thankful for, and because like I said, it was kind of sad seeing the just the dumbassery from the Kaepernick ad, whether it be the magazine one, which is where all the memes are coming from, or the actual commercial. But yeah, these memes from the magazine, making fun of the magazine ad, are just most of them have been pretty top notch. And for the next week, please keep them coming, because they are really good.
Oh, the Mayweather one was hilarious.
I didn't see the Mayweather one either.
It's because he's illiterate, and so it's just all just like garbled letters.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah, it's like not even words. It's just like when you're like little and like you come upon a typewriter for the first time. You're like
yeah.
Yeah, that's basically what it was.
Oh my god.
Oh man.
Oh. Goodness. So yeah, it was really good to kind of see that around this week, and good that there's people that whether they're from the right or the left, that the ones that were creating these had a good sense of humor about it.
Right. Yeah.
Although I assume that most of them were not from the left.
Of course not, because the left doesn't know how to meme.
Yeah. And kind of I guess another good segue into this, considering this Nike commercial is, we weren't necessarily going to make this a topic today, but what the hell, we'll throw it in here for extra since we're doing a pre-tape. The Jim Carrey's kind of gone way off the deep end recently, as far as kind of going super socialist left wing.
Mm-hmm.
And he had an appearance recently on Bill Maher's show, probably because he has a new show that is either out or is coming out on Showtime. I don't know too much about it.
Something like that.
And of course, like most socialists, presenting a ton of anecdotal evidence about why it works when it actually doesn't. But his end to the conversation with Bill Maher is like, well, at least, but it's like, and look, I have Nikes too, and he kicks his feet up on the desk and shows his support for Nike by throwing them out there. It's like, okay, like, who cares?
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, I didn't watch the whole thing, but I did. What is it? I did catch the highlights. And God, what the hell? Sorry. Yeah, I got the highlights, but like his advocacy of socialism makes no sense.
No.
He's a multimillionaire, and yet he wants and then he advocates for the system where it takes away money from those who have the most, for merely having it. Not because like they're bad people or they're tax, or they, evaded, paying their income tax or whatever. It's just like they just have it, and then giving it to somebody else. You know, and his like support or endorsement of it is just ridiculous because, if that's true, then Jim Carrey, you should give away all your money except for 30 grand.
Yep.
Right, and then because that's what socialism does. It tries to make everyone mediocre.
Well, it's like,
at a certain point,
why does he have more?
At a certain point, Jim Carrey was a big draw, and he made a lot of money because of of his ability, because of his talents, his ability to draw in the eyeballs and their wallets. But I mean, now, like, he's only, a part of me thinks that he's only pushing for this, he's only advocating for socialism is because, it's popular, it'll get him, it'll get him applause, which kind of proves my point, during the Bill Maher, appearance, when, he just said like, oh, socialism, and everyone just like, erupted into, thunderous applause.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, based off of their logic, it's, well, okay, Jim, like, why do you have more than me? That's not fair. I deserve some of that money.
Yeah, I know. I didn't do anything to earn it. I mean, you did all the work, but I deserve it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what he's advocating for. And I mean,
I should be writing him letters and having him send me money.
Yeah. Right?
Instead of, it's like, no, you did you acted and earned a lot of money, which
you do all the work, and then you give me like half of it, and and that's socialism. Like, I didn't do anything to earn that money, but you have to give it to me. Like, I'm not offering any service or value or anything really, and so I shouldn't have I shouldn't have any claim to that money, but under socialism I do.
Yeah, it's well, and there's also this big push for people are trying to make it seem like, well, socialism's not communism. It's something completely different. It's like, well, no, that's not right.
Socialism, but with a nation.
It's it's the thing is, it's just they're the same. They're really the same thing. Maybe there's a few nuanced differences, but in reality, it's really the same thing. It's kind of like HIV and AIDS. It's like, well, yeah, they're not the same thing initially, but they end up becoming the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, you start out with HIV, and then it becomes AIDS.
Right.
Like, it's I mean, it doesn't matter like with communism or socialism. They start off as different things, but they eventually end up with starvation and genocide.
And just throughout history, it is always done very poorly, and has led to the deaths of so many people.
Yeah, 100 million.
And yet, but we keep banging our head against people. The left keeps banging their head against the wall. It's like, well, we can make it work this time if we just try hard enough.
No, it's because it just wasn't implemented correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
But if we have one more chance, we're it's for sure gonna work.
There's always that one of those rhetorical kind of like what if questions, like if you go back in time and do something, and like change history, what would you do? Is like I would go back in history and kill Karl Marx before he wrote his stupid doctrine. I'd save at least 200 million lives easy.
But do you really think that it was Marx? I mean, what if, okay, let's say you do develop time travel technology and go and bust a cap into Karl Marx's head. But what if you come back and socialism was still a thing? Like, but just someone else, eventually wrote up the thesis.
Well, then it was like one of those things where then you could argue that, well, time is just or like certain events are just supposed to happen in time, and it's like, okay, if Karl Marx didn't do it, then someone else is just going to come up with it and just kind of create. So it wouldn't have been like Marxism; it'd be like Steveism or something.
Right.
It's
yeah. Damn those Steves.
Yeah, but no, if time could be changed or like certain events could be prevented, and because Marxism is like the beginning of, it's kind of the foundation that communism and all this other stuff comes from. And if you could break the foundation before it begins, I mean, maybe it does end up coming about, but maybe it comes about like at a much later time.
Okay.
So I don't know. And I wasn't planning on really, thinking about it more than just the idea.
I just like to pose those questions.
Yeah.
Because
But yeah, I killed Karl Marx.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, no, I would, same question to me, I would make it so that the Frankfurt School never got to be a thing.
Remind me the Frankfurt School. I'm kind of sorry. I'm drawing a blank.
Like basically like this group of like intellectuals from Germany, and they're like one of like
yeah,
they're one of like the bastions for like Karl Marx and and all these other kind of like thinkers, like those postmodernist kind of thinkers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I do. I make it so like the Frankfurt School like didn't happen.
Yeah, and if you really think about it, that probably prevent Nazism, because that was people don't like it. People don't like to admit it, but that was a socialist.
Even though because there's people are so indoctrinated or misinformed that they don't even know what Nazi means.
Yeah.
They don't know that socialism was part of Nazism.
It probably would have prevented Mussolini as well with fascism in a sense where where the government controls everything and no one can get ahead. A lot of those terrible governments, I mean, it probably would have been replaced by something else, but it's one of those, if you're looking for puppy dogs and rainbows, like really Marxism has created a lot of horrible ideas and has cost millions and millions of lives, hundreds of millions of lives throughout the course of history. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure that's not what Marx was, planning on, but damn. That's what ended up happening for sure.
Yeah. Debatable. I don't know. I just think Marx was, he was like, he was just like any nobody who was, going after a power grab. And he saw in like, one of the I forget, I don't know if it was Clavin but like one of the reasons, like initially, like postmodernism or Marxism specifically, didn't take that much of a hold in America is because in America there weren't any classes.
Right.
There was so much like social and economic mobility that it was hard to like say, it's hard to point out, a certain class, like, oh well, like the ultra rich, like we have to, like, because like a person can come from like Europe, and hustle his ass off and then become a millionaire.
Right.
Yeah, but it was, yeah. So oh yeah, like, yeah, it was like the aristocracy. That's what it was. There was no aristocracy within America, so people weren't like born into like a certain class. You could work your way up or down, depending on your own efforts. And so yeah, that's the reason why Marxism didn't take hold that well in the beginning. But then Marx realized, oh, I have to make it a race thing, because America has like the original sin of slavery, and so he had, and that's how they introduced Marxism. It's like, oh well, you blacks, you're doing bad because the whites, and et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, same
Yeah.
thing, and the same thing with like the radical feminists. Like it's just Marxism. It's like, oh, women, you're being oppressed by the men, and on and on and on and on.
Crap, what was no, you said something that like it brought to mind. It's like, well, yeah, well, I think we've talked about this before too, where the idea is like, sure, okay, there is inequality even in America in a sense, but it's not like a forced inequality where I could start off with I grew up from I could start out as I grew up in a poor family, or I was born into a poor family, but I don't. Unlike in other societies or throughout history, it's like, well, you're poor, you're always going to be poor. Like, there's nothing that you can do in life to change that status.
Exactly.
But in a capitalist society, where it's like you can start out as a nothing and become something if you work hard enough, and vice versa, is you could be born into a rich family or a very wealthy situation, but you can piss that all away pretty easily if you worked hard enough at it.
Yeah, because in a free market, in capitalism, there's always going to be a flux of money, because the Fortune 500 companies 100 years ago aren't the same as they are today.
Right.
So like so there's so money is always wealth generation and retention are always within flux, because like even 50 years ago, like the big corporations like Coca-Cola, Polaroid, Kodak, but
Kodak barely exists anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But they were like one of the richest companies in the world like 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And so so it's like within the capitalist system, it's you're you rise or fall by your own efforts or by your own doing.
Yeah, it's and I think that's the other thing that happens too, whereas we look at where the people that believe in socialism, they think that there's this class system that everyone belongs to, and that's really not the case. You have guys like throughout history. Okay, well, we had slavery. It's like, well, some of those slaves, like especially towards the end of slavery, once they gained their freedom, ended up doing something in our society. Like, Frederick Douglass was, ended up becoming something, was he like, I don't remember if he was like a...
he was like one of like the first like political influencers.
Yeah. I forget what in politics he ended up doing, but like, it was, he became an influential person.
And influential thinker, influential like philosopher.
And then even like in people who are like, like my grandparents or my great grandparents, they were slaves, but now I'm in a a certain political sphere, or I own this company that's doing well. And it's like, so whereas like in other societies, it's like that doesn't happen. Like once
Yeah.
your grandparents were slaves, you're a slave. You know, it's kind of like they're you were part of the slave caste that you know.
There's never in the history of the human race, there like in America, like there's never been a country like America. There's never been the mobility within like society or economics that we've had in history. You know,
Right.
like I mean, it was like it was like a good like 2,000 years before like they even had the merchant class, which was kind of like the proto middle class. And people look down on the merchant class, even but then like they were like the proto middle class because they were like kind of entrepreneurial, and like they had businesses, and like so they were comfortable, but they weren't like Caesar balling.
Right. And that's where it's like, okay, yeah, I understand that capitalism is not perfect, and yeah, there's people that do game the system, they cheat a little bit,
Right. Like
but eventually
with any system, it's ripe for abuse.
Yeah, but I also believe that catches up to people. If you cheat and lie and steal and are quote unquote successful, that eventually catches up to you in some form or another, whether it be in this life or the next. But as opposed to the other alternatives that are around in this world, I'll take capitalism all day long.
Word. Yeah, I mean, it's also like kind of a mentality thing too, because like I am not rich by any sense of the means. I'm more or less living paycheck to paycheck. But I don't think of myself as poor. I'm just an almost billionaire. That's the mentality that I have, and that's the mentality that you have to have if you want, if you really want to get to where you want to go. Because I'm not poor, I'm not broke, I'm just the almost billionaire.
Right.
So.
But yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Is like I used to have a lot more money than I have now. But I'm still recovering a little bit from my year of not working, which took a little bit of a toll. But that's the. But I'm not like stuck in this poor situation. Like if I work hard enough and I make good decisions, and I'll be fine.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's that so to Jim Carrey and your Alexandria Nina Pinta Santa Maria Cortez, or whatever the hell her name is, and Bernie Sanders, it's kind of
it's the socialist with 3 freaking mansions. Let that soak in a little bit. He's a socialist.
It's like
3 mansions.
And here's the thing, where it's like when you don't even believe in your own cause, if he truly believed in socialism, and why he still has all those houses, why he still has all the money that he's a lifelong politician. He hasn't had a real job in his life.
Right. Yeah. What is that joke? I think I heard it from Crowder first. Yeah, he was just couch surfing for the better part of like 30 years.
And
then he became a politician.
If he ended up getting a real job and ended up giving away all that stuff to the government or what else that he actually really believed in, then okay, hey, I might not agree with you, but you're committed to your cause.
Right.
You believe it.
Then he's living his principles out.
Right. And then it's like, okay, well, I feel like that might actually be, I can respect him at that point. It's like, hey, I don't agree with you, but at least you're living out what you believe in. But he doesn't believe in it. He believes in capitalism has done very well for him, and he's just, living out this existence that is just, Bernie Sanders, what a, my God, what a dill hole. And the idea of like people waiting in line for food, that's a good thing. It's like, no, it's not.
That means there's food. Well, did you? I remember I saw like a meme, and it was the shop owner from Venezuela, and then in one picture, it was like the before picture, it was him, and he was like, he kind of had like that success fat, and his like in his shop, like there was like it was full of like stuff to be sold. And then it's like, present is like after present day, after socialism, and he's like he's lost considerable weight, and his store shelves are like bare.
Mm-hmm.
And just like this is what you want, this is what you get under socialism. It's not everyone is equal. It's just everyone's equally poor and hungry.
Except for the leadership.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean the thing is like it's not like I enjoy being living paycheck to paycheck or living or being like sometimes broke at times, but I would much rather it's like the mentality of a fighter. It's like I'd much rather go down swinging.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, and I'd much rather be homeless, knowing that I tried everything that I could to make a buck, because then at least I can say that I tried, and I could live with myself because I tried everything I possibly could have to make $1.
Mm-hmm. Same here.
Yeah. So.
And well, since we have talking about socialism, I guess we should switch over into talking about the apocalypse. Apocalypse Now.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. The Apocalypse Now. For those of you unaware, well, we've been doing these movie reviews, and we just finished our Kubrick month, and so we're doing like a little bit of we're in a transitional month with like no real like theme. So this month it's just kind of like
hodgepodge.
Up in the air, kind of whatever we think of. But we decided to do Apocalypse Now. Those of you who don't know, when was this movie made? Like in the 70s?
1979.
1979. So the late 70s. Directed by Francis Ford Coppola of Godfather fame. And it's a story about this army captain who is tasked with assassinating a very well-respected, highly decorated colonel, who had who was destined for greater things than the army. And the movie is kind of like a descent into madness for the main character, who is played by Martin Sheen. And he's tasked with this mission to go kill him. And as he goes, as he's going up, as he's traveling and going along the river within Vietnam, they have like these different kind of run-ins, and like it's slowly like eroding their humanity. And it's slowly eroding their humanity, and it culminates at the end where they finally meet up with this colonel, and Martin Sheen's character ultimately takes him out, but the Colonel Kurtz, he kind of almost welcomes it because he realizes what he's become. He realizes the darkness that has entered his heart and stripped him of his humanity, and he almost kind of welcomes his own death. And so I guess we'll go into our review now.
Kind of considering that, with the way you ended that too, where he embraces that darkness, is when we first start the movie, we see him in that hotel room where he has kind of already like been kind of darkness has already kind of embraced him.
Right.
He's
Yeah,
kind of he's gone crazy, and he's normal life it makes him crazy.
right.
And
Because prior to this mission of killing Colonel Kurtz, he was part of another mission which ended up having him kill four suspected Vietnamese uh, spies. And so I think
yeah,
and then he was like and like I think he kind of had like had like a promising career, but then since this happened, like his career has kind of stalled or been you know or his career has been kneecapped. And so yeah, he's like gone into like this kind of spiral, like he drinks and and has like these kind of hallucinations.
So you kind of wonder if like that madness, that darkness was already in him, and going after sorry, going over after that colonel and listening to his words. It's like he's kind of seeing a mirror version of himself almost. And as we go through the film, you kind of see and the Vietnam War was kind of known as one of, and this happens in any sort of war, but the Vietnam War especially is notorious for being one where a lot of people went kind of crazy, and a lot of bad things happened, and it caused whether you call it we saw in like Paths of Glory, they called it shell shock, or in I forget what they call it for the Vietnam War, but like now it's kind of known as PTSD, where you get just people who suffer through a lot of trauma and don't know what to do with it. And the Vietnam War is definitely notorious for bringing that along. And as Andy was saying, kind of as you progress through the movie, through all the little side missions that they ended up going through, the people, the Martin Sheen and the rest of the characters that he was with, seemed to get crazier and crazier as the as the movie went on.
Right. Yeah. It's this entire movie is like a slow descent into like madness, and I think one of the first kind of the first step I think was when they ran into the cavalry colonel.
Yeah, played by Robert Duvall.
Played by Robert Duvall, and in the movie, Martin Sheen is like narrating, and he described him as one of those officers where he knew like nothing bad was gonna happen to him.
Yeah.
Despite being like on the front lines and being part of the action, like he just kind of walked around and had this kind of attitude, was like nothing was gonna harm him, and he actually, and then like and then Robert Duvall's Colonel character actually stormed or attacked a Viet Cong kind of stronghold just to get access to their beach for the waves, because he was a surfing enthusiast, And so he learns.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he learns that Martin Sheen's Captain Miller it has to go through there to continue his mission. And he's like, well, hell yeah, we're gonna. He's like, and then like when he hears from another soldier, is like, oh yeah, I hear there's like 6-foot breaks. He's like, 6-foot breaks. He's like, oh, then for sure we're gonna take that place. And then he goes, he then rallies his men. He's like, all right, at dawn we're gonna go and take that beach. And then
Well, and then the other crazy thing that was happening is like where that soldier who was talking about the waves and stuff. It's once they like landed on the beach, he like they had surfboards, and so it's like once the fighting started, it's like, well, you can either fight or you can surf on that fucking ocean. It's and so they went surfing. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah, it was pretty nice. But it was interesting because I guess I'm jumping around here a bit, but towards the end, Colonel Kurtz, he talks about like terror, and I think I think there are little elements, of that terror, of the idea of terror in like that throughout this movie. There's like the build up to the attack on the Viet Cong stronghold. Robert Duvall's character, he plays Wagner's Flight of the Valkyries, and he says, oh yeah, we start playing it like a mile out, to put the real put the fear of God into them. And it's like that's just like another form of that's just another I guess that's just another facet of terror.
Yeah, and that's also one of our favorite things of that Wagner song, right, is being played in those type of situations has become it's been used in several films ever since.
Right, like the ominous, that's like the Flight of the Valkyries. That's that's been used and parodied in like every other movie. When like this overwhelming force, usually from above, because air cav, they are made up of helicopters, and so like whenever it's been parodied, there's like using like toy helicopters, like they start playing Flight of the Valkyries so yeah, that's your your cultural touchstone of the week.
Yep. There's one other scene too that gets used quite a bit as well. Towards the end of Martin Sheen's character when he comes up out of the water.
Right. Yeah, kind of
that's
like Commando style, and he has like the green and black paint on his face. And then he goes in and he starts like slitting throats of sentries. And he finally makes his way to Colonel Kurtz and executes him, which I think it's kind of, the imagery was kind of interesting because to parallel that scene, like the natives that Colonel Kurtz had ingratiated himself into, they were having a ceremony where they were going to sacrifice this water buffalo. And there was this kind of oscillation.
That was really horrific, by the way.
Yeah, I didn't think they were gonna actually show they actually showed the water buffalo being hacked. Like you could see the cut into that water buffalo's neck, and the constant hacking. But then they kind of oscillated between those two killings and
and then Marlon Brando, who is about the size of a water buffalo.
Yeah, Marlon. Yeah, again, yeah. The Colonel Kurtz character, the one that goes insane, is played by, of course, Marlon Brando. Again, from Godfather fame. If not from a ton of other movies.
Right. Yeah, there was that. So we had the Flight of the Valkyries with the helicopters. We had Martin Sheen coming up out of the water is one of those iconic scenes that's been parodied and used. Same thing with when they are coming into the on the boat across the river when they're coming into that encampment with all like the natives and people that have been lured in by Captain Kurtz. They're all lined up against the shore. Mm-hmm. That's another one of those like iconic scenes.
Right. Yeah. Just like the decapitated or like the strung up. Yeah, just like that kind of like you wanna scare the bejesus out of somebody. You line some corpses or chopped off heads along a riverbank, and I think that'd be the best deterrent against solicitors as well.
I'd be like, yep, you know what? We're gonna get the fuck out of here.
Right. Yeah, but I totally forgot that Harrison Ford was in this movie too.
Yeah, well, okay. That I was gonna say some of the interesting cameos in the movie. Yeah, you had Harrison Ford. Mm-hmm. Lawrence Fishburne was in the movie.
He was?
Yeah, he was. Lawrence Fishburne was the Mr. Clean Miller.
But no way, really?
Yeah.
He was so skinny.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's the thing about I was reading up. So he was at the filming of this film. He was actually 14 years old. Really? And yeah, because filming began in '76. He was 14, and he had lied about his age to get the role because he was supposed to be like 17 or 18.
Right. You have to be an adult.
Yeah, but he wasn't. He was 14, but he lied about his age to get the role.
Wow.
And I was like, once I was like, man, that guy looks so familiar, but I couldn't place it. And then when I went back and looked at the casting, mm-hmm. and I was like, get the fuck out of here. That was Lawrence Fishburne.
Wow. Yeah, I pulled it up right now.
Like, yeah, it definitely is.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that was Lawrence Fishburne.
Incredible.
Then you had like Dennis Hopper.
Of course, Dennis Hopper. Yeah,
he was like the crazed hippie photojournalist.
Right.
A role he was born to play, baby.
Oh yeah. I mean, after Easy Rider, after Easy Rider, what do you follow that up with?
Right. Exactly. Who else was it Francis Ford Coppola played the TV news director at the beginning of the film?
Oh yeah, at the beginning where when they initially meet Robert Duvall's character, it's just like keep moving,
right.
don't mind the camera.
Don't look at the camera.
Keep moving.
Yeah, that was him. Yeah, you had Robert Duvall, as Godfather.
Godfather alum.
Fame. I'm trying to think of who else was. Oh, and then it was uncredited, but R. Lee Ermey was in this film too. He was the helicopter pilot.
Yeah, he was the pilot.
Who later came to fame in Full Metal Jacket.
Right. Yeah, as Sergeant Hartman.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like great cameos in the film too. Mm-hmm. Something that I the film was very weird. And I think that was what Coppola was going for, was something that was kind of weird. Mm-hmm. You have you're always kind of like wondering with Martin Sheen's character, who was Captain Willard. That was his name, and he's on this super top secret assassination attempt. Mm-hmm. Of Commander Kurtz's, he's gone rogue, so he's going to be assassinated. And he's already, like I said, we said it, he's already mad at the beginning of the film, and I think he had a lot of times, especially what I've heard from a lot of Vietnam veterans, is that going back to something that's simple or normal life is very difficult, especially if you've been in a very difficult war situation, mm-hmm. which Captain Willard had been. He'd been through a lot of tough situations, and we see him, he's on leave, or he's kind of on his way out of Vietnam, and he's kind of going crazy because he's not actually, he's not doing anything. He doesn't know how to cope with all that he's done, and he's, almost praying. He's like, I want to go back into the fight, to do something, because he feels like that's all he's worth of doing.
Right.
And so when he finally gets that mission where, it kind of takes him a second to regain his composure, but then throughout most of the film, he seems quite normal, actually. Nothing. He's kind of like, okay, I have a mission. I know what I'm going after. And of all the group that he's with, he seems to be the most, in control outside of the chief of the boat that he's on.
Yeah.
And so, they're going through, and even when they go into some of those other bases that the chief has, like, missions that he's trying to complete too, and those other bases that they run into where they've lost their commanding officer or anything, they've kind of lost their minds as well.
Right. Yeah.
He seems to be the only one that's like has his composure.
Right. He still maintains discipline even in the face of chaos.
Right. Exactly.
And then he offers and he gives the men that's like the chief gives purpose and direction to the men that are under him, because like he has like a steady and resolved disposition to himself.
Yeah, and if throughout the time that they're traveling to that area, he's getting to know Commander Kurtz, and how he's kind of right, and he's learning about his mindset and like all the information that's been given to him, how he's become a crazy person, he's a danger to those around him, and then he finds out that there's other people that have been lured in by him and have turned them as well. And as I think, like, what may have turned him kind of somewhat to it obviously ends up killing him, but at the same time, I think he's also enticed by his words as well, because he's not a crazy person per se. He just has kind of like a lot of he just has a super negative view on the world, and it's like, he's wanting this is Commander Kurtz, where he's trying to kind of create his own army and kind of unite both, like the Viet Cong and anyone that wants to come and listen to his message. And whereas, like, he's enticed by that because it's like, well, it's kind of I can live in this insanity yet, but there's also purpose to the insanity. Whereas when it came to the actual war itself, he felt like there was it was just insanity for the sake of insanity. There wasn't a whole lot of purpose to it.
Right. And I think Captain Miller, Martin Sheen's character, he starts because he in like the dossier that they gave him, with information about Colonel Kurtz. There are some reports that he wrote about, like, oh, we could, we're putting too much into it. We could achieve our objectives with half the amount of men if we cut these certain like luxury items out. I think he cites like rock and roll and beer as one of the vices that that will make soldiers like complacent, because they have like these creature comforts that remind them of home, so that then they will, and then in turn like lose focus and no longer be effective.
Right.
And so yeah, and and to the point that you brought up about how how does one because Colonel Kurtz was a very impressive person because he was in the dossier he said it was like third generation West Point. Um, he was the first person over the age of 35 to join the special forces and also become a Green Beret. And also go to like jump school and and just you know, do all these impressive things. And so you know uh, Captain Miller, he was definitely up against a very impressive person.
Yeah.
And so maybe he thought maybe in his mind his only way of defeating Colonel Kurtz is to like is to in in essence become like Colonel Kurtz and embrace the madness, embrace the darkness, embrace the terror, as it were.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what we're left with is Kurtz's last words to Miller as he was killing him was the horror, the horror.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of really the theme of the entire film is all we're kind of introduced to is the horror.
Right. And there's different types of horror. There's the horror of one's personal actions, and there's the horror of the horrors of following orders. There's the horror of kind of like aimlessness. As demonstrated by Captain Miller in the opening scene where he's just like kind of going nuts. So
Yeah.
again, I think and there's like psychological horror as demonstrated by Robert Duvall's character of using music to instill horror or terror into the enemy. So yeah, horror is deeply woven within this movie.
Hey, a second film where music has been the horror, like in was it Clockwork Orange, where
oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, that was a movie where music was turned into horror.
Right.
The Twig Man.
Yeah. Right, so any other thoughts?
It's this is a one of those movies where I never felt comfortable watching the movie, and that was by design, I assume. The film was always meant to be uncomfortable, and when it comes to this is so fresh after the end of the Vietnam War that I think that was Coppola's intention was to show the kind of the the horror of war, quote unquote the horror, and so I think it was always meant to be very uncomfortable, and you definitely get that throughout the whole movie, and all the characters were in their own way kind of played a part in that horror. We see Martin Captain Willard, who he's already on the descent of madness to begin with, and hell, in real life, Martin Sheen kind of went insane during the filming of the film. He ended up having a massive heart. I don't know if it was like a massive heart attack, almost died. Mm-hmm. But even before that happened, he had kind of gone off the deep end mentally, filming this movie during the filming of the film. But then even though the other characters were like Robert Duvall, Captain Kilgore, he instead of letting the horror, instead of letting the horror embrace him, he brought the horror, and you had Marlon Brando, Commander Kurtz. He kind of became a horror of himself. He wanted to be the horror. And it's just everyone kind of that was the theme of the film, and how there was characters either that were that they've either allowed the horror to come inside of them. You saw that in the people that like the Playboy Playmates. We watched the Redux version, by the way. So if you've only watched the theatrical release, some of the things we might say might.
Yes, yeah, because like one of the Playmates, she was describing like kind of like a casting couch situation and just like the horror of that. And so,
while like she was discussing that while next to a dead body inside of a cabinet or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So you had that situation. You had the soldiers that had lost their commanding officer on their trip that had completely descended into madness.
Mm-hmm.
You had Commander Kilgore, who he similar to he was providing horror. You had Commander Kurtz, who was horror, and like people feared him, and so every character that was in this film, kind of was embraced that theme of the horror of war, in various ways, and so that's kind of like what we're. In my opinion, that's kind of like what the movie was about, and it was interesting for sure. I've never really sat down and really analyzed the film or sat down and watched it seriously. I've seen it before, but I never really sat down and quote unquote watched it for real. And so I'm kind of coming into this fresh almost in a way.
Yep. All right, so I guess that's all we have to say about that.
What are your thoughts, Andy? Did you have anything else to add?
No, but I think okay. The only thing I will add, I think Colonel Kurtz was the only one fully aware of his of his situation, and like he realized that like he can never re-enter society again, and he like and I think in Captain Miller's narration, he was like saying like, he knows why I'm here, and I think a part of him welcomes it. And I think it just and that goes to show, and just like his at the end when like his almost willingness to die. I mean, it didn't look like he was giving, he was putting up that much of a fight. I mean, if anything, like if he put up a arm, I would guess it was more of an instinctual thing. But I think he was prepared to die because he realized that there was no place for him in the civilized world, and there was no use for him after that because they turned him. The army had made him into a weapon of war, and there's nothing else that you can be used. It's not like you can go, you can be used to as a weapon of war and then go and run your kids carpool, or or sit on the PTA. Is just like and I think he was ready to die because he knew like the darkness and like the horror that he had become could not be allowed to abide.
In a way, he was only he was the last sane person left.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's a good way of putting
it. Good point.
All right. So on a scale of 1 to 5, what would you give Apocalypse
I'm gonna go with a 4 on this one.
4, okay.
Yeah, I give it a 4A because it kind of there was a theme throughout the whole movie. Obviously it's weird, but the theme was pretty consistent throughout. All the characters kind of embraced that theme, and I like the dialogue. I like the cinematography was good. Overall it was just it was a good movie.
Yeah, I give it a 4 as well. Just on based on the things that you said as well. Yeah, really, it's one of those movies where you like have, you kind of have to mentally prepare yourself because you are gonna see some really weird shit, and but I think you know, but I think ultimately it's saying it's saying a lot, and I think it's something that's worth saying, and and it's something that's worth listening to and to consider.
Yeah, so, definitely. I would agree with that. It's definitely it's a good movie to go and watch.
Yeah, just I wouldn't recommend it as a first date movie, but
no, God no. Yeah,
unless the girl's like really into like those psychological, deep philosophical kind of movies.
Yeah, if you really like psychological thrillers, then this is the movie for you.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's the end of our review, and there's nothing else to say. So I guess this is the end of the show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. I know this is a pre-tape, but don't forget to join us every Tuesday. I know you all know where my mind is, just waiting for the weekend. Yeah, don't forget to join us every Tuesday for at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for our Nocturnal Transmissions live stream. Don't forget to check out our library of content from the Circle of Jerks Circle of Jerks podcast, Nocturnal Transmissions, and also the library of Robert's show Up by Up Down. Don't forget to follow us on our various social medias, Twitter at PodcastCOJ, and Instagram at Circle of Jerks Podcast. So for Robert and myself, we say thank you and good night.
See you later, guys.